Hey guys, today I want to share a story that I think a lot of you really need to hear, especially if you're planning to buy a condo in the Philippines or you're just curious about how real estate works here. But this is not my personal story, okay? It's someone else's experience. But when I listened to everything this buyer went through, I realized this could have been me. This could happen to you, to anyone. And the craziest part is he bought it from one of the biggest developers in the country, the ones that proudly call themselves quadruple A. Now, just to give you a context of quadruple A, says here some prominent Filipino construction companies with a quadruple A or highest level contractor accreditation from the Philippine Contractors Accreditation Board or PCAB. Quadruple A is a construction or real estate firm holding the highest contractor's license from the Philippine Contractors Accreditation Board. It supposedly means they have superior financial capacity, technical expertise, and experience. So basically, if you had to bet on which developer to trust, this would be the one. You'd think this would be the safest choice, right? Well, here's what really happened. So there is this buyer. He bought a pre-selling unit from this developer, this quadruple A developer. Everything was official. He signed a contract to sell. He paid the 30% down payment. He cleared the turnover fees. He started his monthly amortizations right on schedule. So everything is on time. He didn't miss any payment. Like most buyers, he even scheduled his life around promised turnover date. So he extended his apartment lease just enough so he could move out at the time of turnover. So everything was timed perfectly and the contract was clear. If the developer failed to deliver, the buyer could walk away and get a full refund. That's written right there in the contract, black and white.
I was excited. I saved and planned everything. I was even ready to move my belongings once the turnover date came. But when the time arrived, nothing was ready. The building wasn't finished, elevators weren't working, corridors were bare, my floor wasn't even completed. Yet the developer insisted on a turnover.
But then the reality hit at the supposed date of turnover. The developer was not communicating to him. He's like, he need to chase them. He was wondering why they aren't communicating. It's turnover. So he waited more, but they really aren't sending him a turnover notification. So he initiated a conversation with them by email. And then the nightmare began. They are now twisting all the promises. They're now making excuses after excuses, saying that the date in the contract wasn't actually for turnover of his unit. I mean, it made no sense. Just lies after lies after lies. They are not proactive too. He requested pictures of the progress. They agreed, but never sent him any. So he asked if they can adjust the amortization instead because the unit wasn't delivered on time anyway. But instead of helping him, instead of like compromise, they ignored him. Worse, they threatened him with penalties if he didn't keep paying. They are not willing to compromise, even if they already breached the contract. So that's basically breaching the contract. Now, his problem is that he doesn't know where to go to because he couldn't extend the apartment he's renting anymore because someone's already taking over. And that added up to his stress. And actually, he already extended before because of that, all the delay of his condo. It's not easy to find an apartment, especially if you have to bring all your furniture and appliances. Eventually, they admitted that only 22 floors, yeah, were finished. And his unit is on the 56th floor. And because of that, he requested for a full refund. I mean, because maybe, of course, you'll get tired of it. He doesn't want to put himself through with the delays and the lies and the tricks they were doing to him. So he basically doesn't trust them anymore. He doesn't want anything to do with them anymore. He does not want to be affiliated with them. He does not want to work with them. He does not want to see them anymore. So like basically turning the place that he wants to be a home into like a hostile environment for him. He requested for a refund. Of course, they declined that. Of course, they're gonna decline. So he hired a lawyer to help him with it. The lawyer sent them a demand letter for the full refund. You know what did they do after that? They forced a turnover. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by they forced a turnover? So they tried to finish his unit, which is on the 56th floor, But here's the kicker. Imagine you're told your unit is ready. You go there to check because you're required to check the unit if it's okay with you. And then you go there to check, and then the elevators aren't working, the corridors are not finished, walls are bare, and most importantly, there's no occupants for me. So that's actually dangerous. Construction noise everywhere, wires, debris, workers hammering and drilling on the lobby of the floor, noisiness everywhere. And there's only one elevator that is working, which is the one that the workers are using. So the other units on the same floor and downstairs, all downstairs, are all unfinished too. They tried to rush and finish just his unit so he would sign the turnover form. But remember, only until 22nd floor is actually finished. Once they claim turnover, they can pressure you to continue all the payments, the amortizations and everything. And it's like you don't have any more excuse to ask for a refund, even if the place isn't livable, even if you can't legally move in because there is no occupancy permit. The place in general is not ready to be occupied. So they are faking the turnover. They did it in a bad faith. And what will happen to you? You will be stopped because on paper, they have delivered. But of course, he did not accept that. He didn't sign the turnover paper. He pushed back. But okay, I'm going to ask you this question. If you were in that situation, would you live in that condition? Would you sign the turnover papers? I mean, imagine this. There were cables and wires of the construction equipments on the way to your unit, and like debris or wires that are dangling around. And in a construction sites, you are not allowed to enter unless you are a worker. And workers are required to wear protective equipment. And by the way, he did not buy the condominium just for the sake of buying a condo. It's going to be his home.
They even put words in my mouth. In one email, they claimed I requested an early turnover with compensation. I denied it immediately. It was false. I never asked for that. They were twisting the narrative to make it look like I agreed when I didn't.
So, what do you do when a giant developer breaches the contract? Make lies utter lies. Of course, you turn to the law, right? So in the Philippines, that means the Human Settlements Adjudication Commission, or HSAC. So it's supposed to be the buyer's protection, the one place where the consumers can hold the developer accountable. So he sent two demand letters actually, because the first one was for the refund. They were asking for a refund, right? And they ignored that. They didn't answer. And he wasn't inventing this. The contract itself says that if turnover is delayed for whatever reason, including act of God, the buyer is entitled to full reimbursement. So it's getting more exciting. The next thing is they tried to defraud him. They tried to defraud him by tricking him into signing a cancellation form. And they tried it so many times through email and in person. They explained it is not a cancellation form. You just need to put your name and your signature. But don't worry, sir, it's not a cancellation form. But the form is literally a cancellation form. And it is written on the top of the form, cancellation form. And he showed me the email, and he said a lot of like, I'm not going to sign this because this is a cancellation form. I'm not canceling it. You guys breached the contract, and it's your fault. So it's a breach of contract, and it's not a cancellation. You need to be careful of whatever they are making you sign, because maybe they're also tricking you. Do you know what does a cancellation form mean? That form is only for buyers who decides to cancel their purchase for reasons like bankruptcy, for some reason they can't continue to pay, or death of the buyer. If you sign that form, you would be entitled to 50% refund only, plus the deduction of all the marketing fees. So in the end, you'd probably get around 35 to 40% of the total payment you've already paid. And you know what? Those agents who's selling condominiums won't even tell you that. Most of them don't even know that. They only learn how to hard sell from their trainings. I've been there, done that. But with his case, it's different. They have breached the contract, and he stands with what the contract says, which is he is entitled to full refund. So it's mind blowing. They would do everything to keep your hard earned money. But once the complaint was filed, another nightmare began. when you file a complaint, it should go through HSAC first. So HSAC, the Human Settlement Adjudication Commission. So this is a government agency, like I said, that is supposed to step in and try to fix the mess before it gets dragged into a full-blown court case. So basically, they act as the middle ground. They try to get both parties to sit down, talk it out, and see if they can agree on settlement or compromise, instead of immediately going through a long and expensive trial. And on paper, HSAC is supposed to be the buyer's protector, like I said. That's literally their role, to make sure developers can't just, bully you as the buyer, can bully you or cheat you when they fail to deliver.
In mediation, their lawyer came with only one offer, Mesita law. That means even if the developer breached the contract, they only wanted to give me a partial refund, the bare minimum. And the mediator, she wasn't neutral. She told me investment is like gambling. Sometimes you lose. Imagine hearing that when all you did was follow the contract.
Wow. Can you imagine hearing that from an agency that is supposed to protect you? Shocking. You followed the contract, you paid everything on time, you did everything right, and then the system tells you, well, that's how it goes. Sometimes you lose. But here's the reality. In the Philippines, you never really know if these agencies are being influenced or bribed or pressured behind the scenes. Because when you're actually in a mediation process, it doesn't feel like they're on the buyer's side at all. So I was stunned how the mediator handled the mediation. Okay, so basically, the mediation is like this. They were all in the Zoom meeting, the buyer, the buyer's lawyer, developer's lawyer, and the mediator. She announces firsthand that no one is allowed to record the meeting but her, only her. Then she proceeds on recording the Zoom meeting and asks both parties about each other's offer to make an amicable settlement on the table. The developer's lawyer said, knowing my client, they would only offer Macedalo. Macedalo is only 50% refund. Of course, they're going to deduct all the marketing fees there, right? So in the end, you will get like 35 to 40% maybe. So the buyer said, I don't accept it. And my offer is, I want my full refund, but you can deduct the marketing fees like the agent fee. Because when you buy a condo, they give 2% commission to the agent who assisted you. The mediator objected. Like, she objected in a loud voice, basically scolding the buyer and his lawyer. That is not an offer. I told you guys beforehand that you need to prepare your offers. I heard the reporting, by the way. Anyway, like imagine how a Karen speaks. It sounds like that. But I was also shocked when I heard, oh my goodness, wait, what? Why is she acting like that? That is so weird. That is not, it shouldn't be like that, I think. So, while the developer's offer is actually not an offer because that is just by default, by the law. Only if the buyer cancels the purchase due to reasons like I mentioned earlier, death or bankruptcy, cannot pay anymore. The mediator also stops the recording when she wants to scold the buyer. She kicks everyone out of the meeting to speak to him alone and convince him to either take the unit and continue paying or take 50% refund only. Shocking, sir. She tried to convince him so hard and proceeded on making lies about the law. She said, according to the law, you can't get full refund. Your contract doesn't matter because the law prevails. Why so you need to sign a contract if it doesn't matter? If you're not going to honor the contract, why so you need to sign a contract? Just shake hands then. Oh yeah, I'm buying a condo. Thank you. It's a nice deal. That's easier. In the second mediation, it was the same. The developer's lawyer repeated the same script, Macedalo only, 50%. And the mediator spoke to the buyer alone again, away from his own lawyer, and told him he was being too emotional. She kicks everyone out of the meeting room of the Zoom meeting and speaks to the buyer alone to convince him this and that and to tell him that he's too emotional. So at that point, it was clear. The mediation wasn't about fairness. It was about wearing him down.
I wasn't trying to make money. I wasn't speculating. I just wanted a home. But in the end, I became the one financing their project with nothing in return.
I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. This is the Philippines, and, you know, even if you have a contract that states you're entitled to a full refund, and a law that supports that, a law that actually supports that. The decision still depends on the judgment of the arbiter, not the mediator, because the mediator is just a mediator. The arbiter is the mediator's boss in HSAP, or like, let's say like a judge, judge in the court. So, for example, if the arbiter believes that the delay isn't substantial, they may avoid enforcing the contract strictly. So instead, they could apply Maceda law, which is a partial refund, or push for wait until turnover. So yes, the arbiter can avoid or override a certain clause on the contract or the contract in general, because in the Philippines, contracts are interpreted alongside the law. And arbiters or judges have wide discretion on what's fair and reasonable. Okay, that's normal. Let's say that's the standard. But do you trust their judgment here is the question. I mean, with all the corruption here and looking at how is the Philippines compared to other Southeast Asian countries, by the way, I mean, I don't trust Filipinos' judgment. Sorry. That's just the truth. I'm a Filipino. I don't trust the Filipinos' judgment. Even if your contract has a clear clause that protects you, which says refund if turnover is delayed, it doesn't guarantee you'll get it. Because once you file at HSAC, it's up to the arbiter. They decide if the delay is substantial enough to enforce the refund. And if they think it's not, they can just avoid the contract and push you into, getting the 50% refund instead. That's the scary part. In the Philippines, even a clear contract doesn't mean you are fully protected. I mean, instead of protecting the consumer, a lot of times it feels like they just want the buyer to shut up, accept less, and move on. That's exactly what happened to this buyer. Instead of fairness, he was pressured into giving up rights that were clearly written into his contract. And that's the danger of it. The system is supposed to protect you, but in practice, it often protects the big fish. They protect the bully. Now, I think if this happened in the US or any Western countries, it would play out very differently, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it will. That's why your country is how your country nowadays. And the Philippines is still the Philippines nowadays. Because, for example, in the States, the courts stick very closely to the contract. If there's a clause that says refund if turnover is delayed, they will enforce that, period. And if the developer tried to pay a turnover without an occupancy permit, for example, that would even lead to a punitive damages for bad faith, right? I mean, in the Philippines, it's not like that. Even with a clear contract, the arbiter can still say, oh, this isn't substantial. The delay is not substantial, so just take the unit. And yes, they might award damages like rent or attorney's fees, but it still all depends on the arbiter's discretion. I think in Western countries, you would feel more secure with your laws and contracts. It's so sad here, even if you're right on paper, you're not guaranteed protection. It's so sad. And it's just really how it is here. It's it's so frustrating. So to summarize everything with this case, the contract clearly supports his right to a full refund. So force majeure, like COVID, isn't a free pass. Developers need to file extensions and notify buyers. And this developer didn't file for extension during COVID, and they didn't notify all their buyers. At least this person, he did not get any notification about the delay. And a turnover without an occupancy permit, I think that's dangerous. So on paper, it looks like he should win. But in practice, it depends on how the arbiter interprets it. Wow, you have a contract, they won't honor the contract. And the sad part, this isn't it's not just one story of one person. It's not a rare story. There are many others, thousands and thousands of buyers. Developers delay, buyers complain, mediations drag on, and in the end, the system leans toward the big fish, like I said, the developer. So you could pay millions, follow every contract, and still end up waiting years for justice. So if you're thinking about buying a condo in the Philippines, I'm not saying don't do it, but please, please go on with your eyes open. Don't just trust the branding. Don't just trust the promises and the hard selling. They look like they're so kind, they're so nice, they're so accommodating, and they are assisting you very well. But of course, they will take good care of you. You are gonna give them a lot of money. ask the hard questions. What if you delay the project? What if you didn't deliver on time? Or actually, don't ask them because they're just gonna hard sell you. So if you're decided you want to buy, don't ever pay the reservation fee if you don't see the content of the contract. And maybe insert some of your conditions too, or stress and highlight some important clause in the contract. Or maybe you can like insert something like, um, if there is a leak within the 2 years of my stay, if the if the tiles are popping within the 2 years of my stay, I should be entitled for a full refund. That's just an example. I don't know if that is allowed or if you can do that, but you need to see the content of the contract. Or better, hire a lawyer to make sure they are not pulling you. Discuss everything with your lawyer very carefully. And how to get a good lawyer? Honestly, I'm gonna do my research on that because I don't really have an idea how to find one with a reasonable price. Because you know what? Most lawyers here won't really stand up for you. They won't go against the people in authority because they're trying to build a good relationship with them. And that's the reality. They'd rather stay on good terms with powerful people or politicians or people in the judicial system or judicial offices than fight for one client who might never hire them again. So you need to be careful. Don't just hire any lawyer. Try to find one with a good track record or actually winning cases against big companies. Um, Someone with a reputation for standing firm even when it's uncomfortable. And yeah, that might cost more, a lot more for sure, but it's better to pay for a lawyer who's really willing to fight than to waste money on someone who's just going to play it safe and let you lose, quietly. Sadly, this person, I don't want to say anything about his lawyer, but anyway, because once you hand over your money, the system is not built to protect you. So this buyer is still fighting and he's got all the proof on his side anyway. But yeah, even then, even with that, this could take years. And that's the biggest lesson here. In the Philippines, contracts and laws won't protect you the way you think they should. So if you're planning to buy, take this story seriously. And let me remind you again, this is not the only story about this. I actually have one friend who she has the same, exactly the same. So her condominium got delayed and she wanted to move in already and she's so pissed about all the lies that they were telling her, all the tricks. And so she also filed for she requested for a refund and they're only offering 50%, even if she's entitled to full refund. So yeah, thousands and thousands of buyers with the same problem with these developers. Others have it worse, actually. In this video, it might save you from the same nightmare, so save it. And also, I cannot share every detail, specific details, because here that can be twisted into like defamation. But I think I've shared enough for you to understand the danger. And by the way, just to add up, they're also intimidating him by filing like a counter case of like malicious claim. Like he is um claiming false, like malicious things against them, against the developer, and this ruining their reputation, things like that. And by the way, just to read the content of the buyer sent me this. This is part of their position paper. As a result of the baseless and malicious complaint filed by complainant, respondent was constrained to hire the services of counsel and incur litigation expenses to defend itself. 54, the next one. Complainant's deliberate misrepresentation of facts and misuse of judicial processes have caused undue harm and damage to respondent's reputation and business operations. Next, respondent is entitled to the following reliefs. Number one, moral damages, 100,000 pesos. Exemplary damages, another 100,000 pesos. Attorney's fees, another 100,000 pesos. And then another one, cost of suit. So they want him to pay them these things in case they won the case, the developer won the case. He needs to pay them 300,000 pesos. Shocking. What a bully. But I really feel like they're only doing this to intimidate him. That is what powerful people do. They intimidate, they bully, they intimidate. What looks like a safe investment can turn into years of stress, betrayal, and defeat, loss. This is not just about one buyer, okay? This is about a system where the truth doesn't guarantee justice. So, save this video, guys, because I think it is really informative and it will help you someday when you decide to move here for good and decide to buy a condominium. That's a lot to take. I mean, yeah, I feel sad for those people who work so hard and then these big companies just take their money just like that because they can. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate every view count and every subscription. I'm grateful I have this community, and stay tuned and I'll see you guys in the next one.